Hello dear students, this is Dr. Venu with you with a glance of a chapter in Animal Kingdom. Let me revise and recall, and I make you surely to get high score in this chapter. And you know, Animal Kingdom is very simple, very easy. And will you please just look into a chapter history in the previous NEET. In generally, the weightage of the questions per every year it is 3 to 4, and an expected question is also 3 to 4, and the questions are very simple. It may be a direct, like a character with an example, or a character with a phyla, and an animal with a phyla, or an animal with a common name, or sometimes the questions are a unique, with a unique character, or a distinctive character, or a feature on the phyla, and the simple bits such as called to be as an assertion and reason, or more than one option. A questions may be one or two, it may appear as a common characters without any exceptions. Remember, if you can observe in the last PYQ, the NEET 2023, 2024, 2025 and 2025 4 questions, 2024 also 4 and 2023 also 4. It indicates that Animal Kingdom chapter you are going to get 4 questions and 16 marks. At the end of this session, if you can just recall with the keywords, with a specific unique character, I surely say that I promise you that you will get 16 marks in the final NEET 2026. And let's see that among the 4 questions, the 2 questions are always appears to be in the form of the vertebrate characters, or it may be one from the basis of the classification, or one from the non-chordate. Let's have a look on the what chapter contains. The chapter mainly contains the basis of the classification, and it contains the classification of animals with a non-chordate phyla as well as the chordate phylas. And if we can look the NCERT page, which is called to be as a basis of the classification, which is mentioned in our textbook, and let's say the flow chart as well as the concept map of the basis of classification. The classification which always assigns the newly discovered animals with its systematic position. So classification in which the keywords with the characters directly are going to get the levels of organization, the cellular level of organization which is present in the sponges, a tissue level of organization present in the coelenterata or cnidaria, platyhelminthes, in which the tissue level which is not seen, the organ level of organization is seen in the platyhelminthes, and organ system levels of organization is seen from aschelminthes to the chordates. The questions are very simple. Match the following questions: cellular level of organization, sponges and tissue level of organization in the coelenterata, and organ level of organization is platyhelminthes organ system level, either starting from the aschelminthes to the chordate. Now if you can see a pattern of the digestive as well as the circulatory system, the keywords in it incomplete as well as a complete gut. An incomplete gut having a gut with a single opening which is found in the platyhelminthes and coelenterata, and which looks like a blind sac-like gut. But in complete gut having the 2 openings with a mouth and anus which starts from the aschelminthes to the chordata. And if we take the symmetry, mostly asymmetrical, which is considered to be as a sponges, radial symmetry, bilateral symmetry. There is a question on the specific line. any line passes through the central axis which do not divide the animal into two equal halves, and it is called to be as the asymmetrical. Example is called to be as sponges. Any plane which can passes through the central axis, which can divide the animal into two identical halves, and which is called to be as a radial symmetry. And a one plane which passes through the central axis, which divides the animal into two right and left equal halves, is called to be as the bilateral symmetry, and which is present from the platyhelminthes to the chordates. Your questions are: radial symmetrical animals are Coelenterata as well as the Ctenophora and adult echinoderms. And coming to the circulatory system, a open type of circulatory system as well as a closed type of circulatory system. If the blood is pumped out from the heart into the cavity, and it is called to be as the open type, and if the blood is circulated through a series of vessels, and it is called to be as a closed circulatory system. And when you look into the germinal layers, and some animals are called to be as a diploblastic, the cell layers, ectoderm and endoderm, is only present between the ectoderm as well as the endoderm. Undifferentiated mesoglia is present, and that animals are called to be as a Coelenterata. But if between the ectoderm as well as endoderm, if the mesoderm is present, and such animals are called to be as a triploblastic animals, and starts from the platyhelminthes to the chordate. Just look into the diagrammatic representation, and based on the diagram also sometimes the question may be appeared. So if you can link these two questions, the animals with a radial symmetry and triploblastic, your answer is called to be as echinoderms, and diploblastic animals with a radial symmetry is called to be as a Coelenterata and Ctenophora. It's a direct bit. And a very important area in the coelom, the body cavity is lined by the mesoderm, and such animals are called to be as a coelomates, and starts from the annelida to the chordata. If the body cavity is not lined by the mesoderm, but mesoderm appears in the form of a scattered pouches, and such animals are called to be as a pseudocoelomates. An example is called to be as an aschelminthes. If the body cavity is absent, and that animals are called to be as acoelomate, and it is called platyhelminthes. And a question which you can see, the coelomate animals with a triploblastic condition from annelida to the chordates. A pseudocoelomate animal with a triploblastic condition, the answer is called aschelminthes. So question is direct character with a phyla, and coming to the a structure which appears to be as a rod-like, and it is mesodermal in origin and present on the dorsal side of the gut during the embryonic development of some animals is called to be as notochord. And animals with a notochord is always considered to be as it is the chordate animals. Animals without notochord, you can call it as a non-chordate animals, and from Porifera to the echinodermata. And if the body is externally as well as internally is divided into a segment, and such condition is called to be as a metameric condition. So metamerism is seen in the earthworm. Let's see the flow chart of your non-chordate quickly. A non-chordate starting from the Porifera and Coelenterata, Ctenophora and platyhelminthes, aschelminthes, annelida, Arthropoda and Mollusca, echinodermata and hemichordata. So if we can see what is a flow chart with the keywords and a character based on which questions are appears directly, and that is called A. In Porifera, body wall with pores, and presence of water canal system. The importance of the water canal system, it helps in the respiration, exchange of the gases, and the food gathering, and also removal of the waste. And the skeleton with the spicules as well as the spongin fibers. The central cavity is called to be as spongoceles. The canal system, in which the canals as well as the spongocele is lined by the choanocytes or collar cells or flagellated cells. And these animals, in which the digestion is intracellular digestion and with an internal fertilization. And look, the examples are very important in this. With a common name, Cycon is called Scypha. Euspongia is called bath sponge. Spongilla is a freshwater sponge. So the keywords are very important in this. And coming to your Coelenterata, the distinctive feature, presence of the nidoblast and the nidocytes, having the nematocyst and stinging capsule in it. The function of the nidoblast, it's an anchorage and defense and capturing of the prey. And the central cavity is called gastrovesicular cavity, which opens outside with a single opening. And the mouth is always present on hypostome. And the coelenterate is always exist in two basic body forms. One is an sessile and cylindrical, which is called to be as a polyp-like, and another is called a free-living, which is called to be as umbrella shape, which is called medusa. In some cnidarians, such as called corals, the skeleton is made up of the calcium carbonate. And the digestion is always intracellular as well as extracellular digestion. And whereas some animals, such as called to be as an obelia, it exhibit the alternation of generation, also called metagenesis. In alternation of generation, the polyp which can produce asexually the medusa, a medusa can produce sexually the polyp. So an examples in this is called to be as an Aurelia, which is called jellyfish. Physalia is a Portuguese man of the war, and Pennatula is called sea pen, Gorgonia is called sea fan, Meandrina is called brain coral. And whereas in case of the ctenophorans, the unique and distinctive feature is called to be as a comb plates, which consisting 8 external rows of the cilia, which helps in the locomotion. And bioluminescence is specially marked, and digestion is both extracellular as well as intracellular digestion with external fertilization and indirect development. Pleurobrachia and Tinoplana both are an examples for it. And whereas if you can see a question, the diploblastic animals with the common features among the Cnidaria and Ctenophora, A, digestion is extracellular and intracellular. And whereas if we can take the triploblastic acoelomate phyla called Platyhelminthes, animals are flatworms, a distinctive feature. Mostly they are endoparasites, and their hooks as well as suckers are present in the parasitic forms. The gut is incomplete. There is an exception in this. All flatworms have an incomplete gut, but in Taenia, gut is absent. And whereas some parasitic forms can absorb the nutrient through their body wall. And whereas if you can see, there are some specialized cells such as called to be as a flame cells, helps in the osmoregulation as well as the excretion. And fertilization is an internal with the many larval forms. The one of the unique feature is called to be as a free living flatworm called Planaria. It possesses high power of regeneration. Regeneration capacity is high. Your examples in this is called Taenia as well as a fasciola. Tinea is called to be as a tapeworm, fasciola is called to be as a liver fluke. And coming to the a very important another phylum is called Aschelminthes. Your keywords and cross section, they appears to be as in circular with a complete gut. Some of them are called to be as a plant parasites, and some of them are called to be as in free living. And if we can say, and in these animals the gut is complete with a well developed muscular pharynx and excretion with the excretory tube which removes the excretory waste through the excretory pore. And sexual dimorphism is seen among these animals, and females are often longer than the males. And in these animals, an example is called to be as an ascaris, which is called roundworm. Eukaryaria is called to be as an filarial worm. Ankylostoma is called to be as a hookworm. Remember that all are oviparous. There is an exception called Eukaryaria. Eukaryaria is called to be as ovoviviparous animal. And whereas then the first coelomate phylum, which is considered to be as an Annelida, the coelomate metameric animals, and among these animals the body wall with the longitudinal muscles as well as circular muscles, a unique feature which helps in the locomotion. Presence of a segment like body is an absolutely a unique feature in this. And among these animals, the nephridia helps in excretion and osmoregulation. Circulatory system is closed circulatory system, and double ventral nerve cord with the ganglia. And among these animals, the aquatic annelidan, called to be as a nereis, possess a pair of lateral appendages called parapodia, which helps in the locomotion, that is in the form of a swimming. And if we can take, there are some exceptional characters are also seen in this. And one is called the aquatic annelid, called to be as a nereis, is also dioecious. Among the annelidans, earthworm, which is called Ferritima, and the leech, which is called to be as a hirudinaria, a blood-sucking annelidan. And the blood-sucking annelidan hirudinaria is called to be as a parasite. And these two are called the monoecious animal, but nereis is called to be as a dioecious. And coming to the another phylum, a largest phylum, a 2/3 of all the named species, and which includes in the phylum Arthropoda. The unique keywords are the jointed appendages, which helps in the locomotion. The body is covered by the chitinous exoskeleton, adaptation to live on kind of the environments in all habitats. And among these animals, the respiration by the gills, book lungs, and trachea, excretion by the Malpighian tubules, and in Crustacea it is green glands or antennary glands. And in these animals there is a balance organ called statocystis present. So Malpighian tubules helps in excretion as well as osmoregulation along with an antennary glands. An example for this, there are some economically useful insects are there, and one is called Apis, which is honeybee, a bombyx, which is called silkworm, laxifer, and it is lax insect. And there are some vectors which can always spread the diseases, Anopheles, Culex, and Aedes. Gregarious pest is called locust, and the living fossil among the arthropoda is called to be as a limulus. And the molluscans, second largest phylum. Among the molluscans, they are unsegmented, soft-bodied animals with a calcareous shell. The body with a specific head, visceral hump, as well as a foot. The mantle, which is soft, spongy layer of a skin which covers the visceral hump. And it is a very important that a space between the mantle and mantle cavity, that is called a space between the mantle and visceral hump is called to be as a mantle cavity, and they help and especially to provide a space for the presence of the feather-like gills. So respiration by the feather-like gills and feather-like gills helps in the both respiration as well as in excretion. And mouth consisting of a radula, which is generally a rasping organ and which appears to be as a file-like rasping organ, helps in the feeding. So your question is very simple in this. Radula is a character, file-like rasping organ, and whereas mantle, soft spongy layer, mantle cavity, a space between the mantle as well as the visceral hump. See, questions are very simple and examples also. Pila punctada. Pila is called to be as an apple snail, punctada is called to be as an pearl oyster. And sepia, which is called to be as a cuttlefish, loligo, which is squid, octopus, devilfish, aplysia, sea hare, and dentalium is a tusk shell. And Chetoplura is called to be as an chiton. And the another important phylum which is called Echinodermata. The unique feature and distinctive feature of Echinodermata is the presence of the water vesicular system, and which helps in the locomotion, respiration, excretion, and also capturing the food. And among this, the endoskeleton is a calcareous, and these animals are called to be as a spiny bodied animals. And among these animals, the gut is complete, mouth is located on the ventral or oral surface, anus is on the aboral or dorsal surface. Excretory system is absent, and among these animals, the unique feature which differs from the Porifera. In Porifera it is called water canal system, but in Echinodermata it is called to be as water vesicular system. And examples is called Asterius, called starfish, Echinus is called sea urchin, Antedon, which is called sea lily, Cucumeria is a sea cucumber, and Ophiura is called brittle star. And coming to the another important phylum which is called to be as an Hemichordata. And among the Hemichordata, if you can see, the Hemichordates, which are earlierly considered as a subphylum under Chordata, they have a rudimentary stomochord present in the collar region. The presence of a rudimentary stomochord is similar, structurally similar to the notochord, and hence they were previously placed in the phylum Chordata, and they are primitive worm-like animals with a proboscis, collar and a trunk. Excretion is carried by the proboscis gland. A unique characteristic feature in this is called a primitive worm-like animals, and respiration is by the gills. And among these animals, the circulatory system is open, and examples are called belanoglasses and sacoglasses. See, the questions are very simple, and these keywords I can display in your NCERT every page among the non-chordates. So, character with an example, character with a phyla, and in case of the other flowchart which is called to be as an chordata, and among the chordates, the phylum Chordata is subdivided into Urochordata, Cephalochordata, and Vertebrata. Vertebrates are divided into two divisions, Agnatha and Gnathostomata. And among the Agnatha, there is only living class which is present called Cyclostomata, but whereas Gnathostomata is divided into and the superclass, one is called to be as a Pisces, another one is called to be as Tetrapoda. Under the Pisces, we have the class called Chondrichthyes and Osteichthyes. And whereas under the Tetrapoda, we have the class Amphibia, Reptilia, Aves, as well as the mammals. Let's check on the concept map of the chordates. The chordate characters, the presence of the notochord, presence of the hollow dorsal nerve cord, presence of the pharyngeal gill slits as well as the post-anal tail. All these four characters are an important, the animal having these characters, and they are called chordates. The chordata has a urochordata, cephalochordata and vertebrata. Both urochordata and cephalochordata together called protochordata. They do not have a cranium, hence you can call acraniata. Exclusively marine animals, the notochord is present in the larval tail, is a key characteristic feature. Example is called Ascidia, Salpa and Doliolum. If the notochord extends from the head to the tail, which is persistent throughout the life, and that animal is called cephalochordata, and an example is called Branchiostoma, which is also called Amphiaxis and Lancelet. Among the vertebrata, a very important feature, all vertebrates are chordates. The reason, and during the embryonic development, vertebrate have the notochord, but later the notochord is replaced by cartilaginous or bony vertebral column in the adult. Hence all the vertebrates are called chordates, but all the chordates are not called vertebrates. The other characters of the vertebrate that we can see, and presence of a ventral heart. And if we can see, the vertebrates are basically divided into agnatha. What is the key word under agnatha? Jawless vertebrates. Absence of the jaw. And the only living class which is present in this is called cyclostomata. The first jawless vertebrates, and which is cyclostomata. All the members of the cyclostomes are ectoparasites and some fishes. The scales and paired fins are absent. The mouth is circular and sucking mouth without jaws. A presence of 6 to 15 pairs of the gills and cartilaginous cranium and vertebral column. Remember, they migrate from marine to freshwater for spawning. The larva, after metamorphosis, it returns to the marine water. An example is called to be as a petromycin, which is generally called to be as an, it is a lamprey. Myxine is called to be as an hagfish. And whereas if we can take gnathostomata, among the gnathostomes, the presence of the jawed vertebrate superclass, which is Pisces, Chondrichthyes osteichthyes. The cartilaginous marine fishes comes under a class Chondrichthyes. The endoskeleton is cartilaginous. And the very important feature in this is the notochord persistent throughout the life, and mouth is always ventral, and the skin is very tough because of the presence of placoid scales, and the teeth are modified placoid scales projected backwards. Absence of the operculum on the gill slits, absence of the air bladder. As the air bladder is absent, the animals constantly swim to avoid the sinking. They are highly predaceous animals. And among the males, the pelvic fin bears claspers. This is another important, as it has the males having the claspers. Fertilization is internal, and most of them are called viviparous. And an example is called, if we can take The Scoliodon is called dogfish, Pristis is called to be as a sawfish, Carcharodon is called great white shark. And some chondrichthyes fishes which can produce the electric, and this electric organ is present in the torpedo, and some which can have a poisonous sting, and that is called to be as a trigon. And coming to the osteichthyes. Osteichthyes fishes are bony fishes. Endoskeleton is bony, and presence of the cycloid as well as the ctenoid scales. And whereas the presence of the 4 pairs of the gills covered by the operculum, air bladder is present, and air bladder can act as a swimming, and especially which helps in hydrostatic organ, which also regulate the buoyancy. And external fertilization can be seen among these animals, and development is direct. Example is called Exocetus, flying fish. Hippocampus is called seahorse, and freshwater fishes which is called labio, called rohu, Katla is called katla, and clarius is called magur. Aquarium fishes is called to be as a betta, and which is considered as a fighting fish, Pterophyllum, angelfish. Among the tetrapodans, presence of the limbed vertebrates, amphibia, and it is both aquatic as well as a terrestrial. Body wall with head, trunk and tail is absent. The eye is provided with an eyelid and tympanum which can act as an external ear, and alimentary canal, urinary tract as well as the reproductive tract which can open into a common chamber called cloaca which leads exterior. Respiration by the gills and lungs as well as the skin. External fertilization and indirect development. And Bufo is called toad, Rana is called frog, Hyla is called tree frog, Salamandra is called salamander, Ichthyophis is called limbless amphibia. There is an exception. All amphibians are limbed, but whereas the limbless amphibian is called Ichthyophis. Amphibians have a tail, but tail which is generally is not seen, and the tailed amphibian is called to be as the salamander. Whereas among the reptilia, they are mostly terrestrial. They have a dry and cornified skin with epidermal scales and scutes. Among the snakes as well as the lizards, the skin which can shed in the form of the skin cast. A tympanum represents as an external ear. And among them, the 3-chambered heart is present except in the crocodile. And crocodile has a 4-chambered heart. And in these animals, fertilization is internal and it is oviparous animals. An example is called chelone, which is called commonly a turtle. Testudo is tortoise. Chameleon, tree lizard. Calotis, garden lizard. Crocodilus, crocodile. Alligator and alligator. Hemidactylus, wall lizard. Poisonous snakes are Nasa, commonly called as cobra. Bungarus is called to be as a krait, and vipera is called viper. And there is an exception. All reptiles have 3-chambered, but crocodiles is having 4-chambered. All reptiles have limbs, but whereas snakes and few lizards do not have the limbs. And the aves, they are feathered bipeds, capable of fly, exception flightless bird ostrich. And the forelimbs are modified into wings, and hind limbs are having the scales. Endoskeleton is completely ossified. The long bones are hollow and connected with an air cavities, hence it is called pneumatic. It is a flying adaptation. There are 2 additional chambers are present in the digestive system, and that is called crop as well as the gizzard, and air sacs connected to the lungs which supplement the respiration. And internal fertilization and oviparous. Corvus, which is called crow, columba, which is called pigeon, psittacula is parrot, and struthio is ostrich, and pavo is peacock, aptenodytes is a penguin, neophoron is called to be as it is the vulture. And whereas the mammals, the unique feature of the mammals is the presence of the mammary glands by which the young ones are always nourished. The skin is always unique by possessing the hair, the external ear in the form of pinnae, and whereas different type of teeth are present in the jaws. A fertilization is an internal, and they are viviparous with an exception, and which is called to be as platypus, which is oviparous. And the examples under that, you have the macropus is called kangaroo, pteropus flying fox, camellus camel, macaca is called monkey, and ratus is called rat, and felis is called cat, elephas is called elephant, canis is called dog, equus is called horse, and delphinus is called common dolphin, and Balanoptera is a blue whale, and Panthera leo is called to be as a lion, Panthera tigris is called to be as a tiger. And see again, and the character with an example, character with a phyla, the distinctive feature of the character is always asked. And let's see, there is a comparison of chordates and non-chordates. The chordates which always possess the notochord, and the nerve cord or CNS is dorsal and hollow and single, and pharynx is perforated by gill slits, heart is ventral, and a post-anal tail is present. And in non-chordates, notochord is absent, central nervous system is ventral, solid and double, and gill slits are absent, and heart is dorsal, and post-anal tail is absent. Your question comes, a non-chordate differ from the chordate. Non-chordates, absence of the notochord, central nervous system is ventral and solid and double, gill slits are absent, heart is dorsal. And if you can say, what is the common feature? Pharynx is perforated by gills, but gill slits are only the character of the chordates. And there is a definite question if they try to ask. And see, a very important character for us are the distinctive features. You can see, Porifera, the distinctive feature is called body with a pores and canals in walls. Coelenterata, presence of nidoblast. Ctenophora, comb plates for locomotion. Platyhelminthes, flat body and suckers, and Aschelminthes, often worm-shaped and elongated. Annelida, body segmentation and like a rings. Arthropoda, exoskeleton made by chitin and presence of a jointed appendages. Mollusca, an external calcareous shell, and Echinodermata, water vesicular system with adult is radial symmetry, and whereas Hemichordata, worm-like with proboscis collar and trunk, and whereas Chordata, a notochord, dorsal and hollow naruchord, gill slits and with limbs as well as the fins. Let's have a look. There are some character with some exception. It's very important. The question will be asked. Read the following statements without any exception. Read the following statement with a common character with some exception. See, among the platyhelminthes, all have an incomplete gut, but gut is absent in the taenia, and hence taenia can absorb the nutrient from the host through the body surface. Among the Aschelminthes, all are generally oviparous, but Eukaryaria is called to be as ovoviviparous. Among the Annelida, all are monoecious, but in the Nereis it is dioecious. Vertebrates, notochord is replaced by the it is vertebral column, but notochord is persistent throughout the life in chondrichthyes. Amphibia, all are without tail, but except in the salamandra. Salamandra is having tailed one. And whereas all are limbed among the amphibia, but there is an exception, it is called ichthyophis. And reptilia, all are limbed except the snakes as some lizards, and all are three-chambered with a four-chambered heart is in crocodilia. And aves, all can fly, but some flightless, which is called to be as an ostrich. And mammals, all are viviparous, but except in the ornithorhynchus. There may be some questions, sometimes you may get a common characters, and which is generally among the phyla. And there are some linked areas, and that we will see in the next. See, the unique character with a keyword, with a specific pattern of asking question. Let us see a complete NCERT line to line and page wise and the keywords, levels of organization. See, I have mentioned it is called, it is cellular, sponges and coelenterate, tissue level, and in platyhelminthes it is called to be as an organ level. And annelids, arthropods and molluscans, you can see it is called to be as echinoderms and chordates, it is organ system. And whereas in digestive system, among the platyhelminthes, the keyword which is called incomplete with a single opening. And whereas in a complete digestive system has a two openings with mouth and anus. Open type is a specific keyword, and closed type. The question may be, the blood is pumped out of the heart and the cells and tissues are bathed. In closed, blood is circulated through a series of vessels. Whereas in sponges, if you can see, mostly symmetrical. Coelenterate, ctenophora and echinoderms are radial symmetry. And in bilateral, and starting from the triploblastic to the chordates. See, the diploblastic coelenterata and ectoderm, endoderm is separated by the undifferentiated mesoglia. And whereas if you can see, in case of the triploblastic, the third germinal layer is a keyword called mesoderm with ectoendo, and the triploblastic animal starts from platyhelminthes to the chordates. The body cavity lined by mesoderm, coelom, and you see this one, coelomates are generally, right, annelids, mollusca and arthropods and echinoderms. And whereas in the hemichordates and chordates, but whereas in case of the pseudocoelomates, and mesoderm is present as scattered pouches between ectoderm and endoderm. And platyhelminthes, body cavity is absent. Segmentation metamerism in earthworm. And notochord, mesodermally derived rod-like. See, this is a very specific keywords which we have mentioned in the concepts. And in Porifera, primitive multicellular, and water enters through the ostia into the body wall and enters into the central cavity, spongiocele, leaves out ossiculum. And whereas it helps in the food gathering, respiration and removal of waste. And the choanocytes are collar cells lining the spongiocele as well as canals. Intracellular digestion is a keyword, see this one. Spicules and spongin fibers makes the skeleton and reproduce asexually by fragmentation, and fertilization internal and development is always indirect with an examples. And see, any animal with a common name is very important. Phylum with a common name, phylum with a character, common name. Animal with a character and with a common name. And see, coelenterate, mostly marine. The name Nidaria nidoblast and nidocytes, keywords. And gastrovesicular cavity, digestion is extra and intracellular, mouth on hypostome. The basic body forms, polyp and medusa. And alternation generation, metagenesis, and whereas if you can see, it is obelia. And an examples in which, and every example is important, and in case of the Ctenophora, sea walnuts and comb jellies, exclusively marine. Presence of comb plate, 8 external rows, helps in locomotion. Well marked property, bioluminescence, and reproduction only by sexual. And then platyhelminthes, flatworms, mostly endoparasites, hooks and suckers are present, and some absorb the nutrient from the host body directly, and flame cells, osmoregulation and excretion, and fertilization internal and with an indirect development with many larval stages. Planaria with high regeneration capacity with an examples. And if you can see the Aschelminthes, in which circular, hence it is roundworm, and terrestrial parasitic in plants, and whereas the alimentary canal is complete with a muscular pharynx. Excretory tube removes and body waste through excretory pore. Say sexual dimorphism, females are longer than males. Examples, and whereas in Annelida, see sometimes parasitic, which is called the Herudinaria. Aquatic annelid is called to be as a Nereis, which is dioecious. And body surface with distinctly marked metameres. Presence of longitudinal circular muscles helps in locomotion. Aquatic annelidans with parapodia and nephridia in osmoregulation and excretion. And whereas coming to this Arthropoda, jointed appendages, chitinous exoskeleton with respiratory structures and Malpighian tubules. And examples in molluscans, and it is calcareous shell, unsegmented with distinct head, muscular foot and visceral hump, and the mantle, a space between the place, it is visceral hump as well as the mantle is called mantle cavity. Feather like gills is a keyword, and radula is again a keyword. And in case of examples with the common names, and endoskeleton of calcareous ossicles important, and adult echinoderms are radial symmetrical, larva is bilateral symmetrical. And water vesicular system, which helps in the respiration, transport of food, capture of the food and locomotion. And see, the examples are very important in this. Again in hemichordates are again, it's a proboscis, collar and trunk. Presence of the stomochord, which is rudimentary structure with an examples, and excretory gland, proboscis. And you see that a notochord, characters with a cephalochord with an example and character keyword. And coming to the another important in the cyclostomes, the keywords again, cyclostomata, ectoparasites, some parasites and fishes, a presence of 6 to 15 pairs of gills, sucking and circular mouth, and scales and paired fins are absent. And see, they always migrate from marine to freshwater for spawning. And examples are very important. See, cartilaginous endoskeleton, a ventral mouth, persistent notochord, and placoid scale, absence of operculum, teeth, modified placoid scales, and air bladder is absent are the keywords in this. And coming to that, examples for this is very important. And viviparous with claspers are present and internal fertilization. And in Astecthes also presence of the 4 pairs of gills, operculum, cycloid and ctenoid scales. And examples are important in this. And amphibia also, say without scales, moist skin, alimentary canal, urinary and reproductive tracts, open in a common chamber, cloaca. And then examples are again important in this. And belly creepers, and see, they are mostly terrestrial and skin is covered by dry and cornified with epidermal scales and scutes. And the another important, all having the 3-chambered, but whereas crocodile with the 4-chambered. Snakes and lizards shed their scales as a skin cast, and examples with a unique feature. And in case the aves are always flightless bird, ostrich, feathered bipeds, skin is dry without glands except oil gland at the base of the tail, and endoskeleton, long bones are always hollow with air cavities, hence it is called pneumatic bones. Crop and gizzard, and they are the homeotherms, and the lungs are connected with air sacs supplement, examples. And mammals found in variety of habitats. Most unique mammalian characteristic feature, presence of mammary glands. And whereas if you can see, in case the skin is always unique with the possessing of hair, unique another character, presence of external ear called pinna, different type of teeth, fertilization internal, viviparous with a few exceptions, and that is called oviparous ornithorhynchus. Remember dear students, when you look into the comparison in this, the points which I have mentioned with the distinctive features, with the common characters which we have given in comparison directly. And now let me focus on what are the important high field focus areas and where you are getting the questions. And frequently asked areas in the PYQ, in the symmetry, it was asked in the 24, 23 and 19, and coeloms, the questions were asked in 25, 24, 23. Chordate characters 25, 24, 20, and cyclostomes 25 and 15. Remember that every time there is a question, unique character, character with function, animals, character and phyla, and character and the common name. See, these questions are asked continuously. It indicates that every student should be in a position to recall a character with an animal and its function and phyla. And whereas I would like to show some repeated questions which you can see in the 2025, 2024. Imagine that in 2025 assertion all the vertebrates are chordates, but all the chordates are not vertebrate. True. The reason, the members of subphylum of vertebrate possess notochord during the embryonic period, but the notochord is replaced by the cartilaginous or bony vertebral column in the adult. See, this question is repeated here also. It indicates questions are asking very specific in the chordate in the form of the assertion reason or direct. And see the same question which is asked in 24 also. Now let us see the another question about the chordates, about the reference with the chordates and non-chordates. If we can just look into this one. A, they give a direct statements in the form of more than one option. Characters, pharynx is perforated by the gill slits, notochord is absent, central nervous system is dorsal, heart is dorsal if present, postanal tail is absent, as you know that. And this characters, which character is not related to the chordate, or which character is related to the chordate. It's just comparative table. When you look into that one, based on the keyword you can see. They select the correct statements with reference to the chordates. Understand? The same question which it was referred and it is repeated. We hope that you can do some questions based on this. And we have given some MCQs for you. And coming to the another important areas, I would like to say that let's have a rapid recalling and specific lines in this. I would like to mention that the important definition, the space between the body wall and gut wall is called body cavity, and which is lined by the mesoderm. Most of the students can do the mistake. A space between the body wall and gut and lined by the mesoderm. It's very important. And whereas if we take important line, especially in the symmetry, any plane passes through the central axis. I repeat, any plane passes through the central axis of the body, divides the organism into two identical halves, is called radial symmetry. The body can be divided into identical left and right halves only in one plane, is called bilateral symmetry. So remember, any plane passing through the central axis into two identical halves, radial. Echinoderms adult are radial, but larva is bilateral. And in case this petromyzon I have represented, sometimes the students get confused in the form of a fish, and whereas this acidia, sometimes the students may think it is in the fasciola or melanoglasses. Hence I just made it one. And you remember that there is an important exception which we have mentioned, and that is called to be as among the reptiles, the snakes and lizards shed their scales as a skin cast, and the exception is called oviparous mammal, is called platypus. And whereas is a generally, and this we will see in the form of a chart. Mostly the students can get common trap in definitions in some unique features, such as called in Porifera, a unique feature is called water canal system, but in Echinodermata it is a water vesicular system. The word is called, it is water, and it here also water. So what is the difference? Water canal system is a modification of body wall and presence of the choanoflagellates or choanocytes, which always helps in the filter feeders, and it does not help in the locomotion. But whereas water vesicular system is always, it is a modified coelom and it helps in the locomotion. Then what is a common character? Respiration is a common character, excretion is a common character, and capturing of the food is also common, but the difference is only locomotion in water vesicular. Dear students, remember, you are the success, and you can able to keep every keyword in the form of a mind mapping, and believe once you recall, and you can definitely get the 16 marks among this animal kingdom. I say that character, animal with an phylum, character, animal with a common name. Believe you are the success, I repeat, and you can able to do more better, and your point and your continuous recalling, it makes your neurons strengthen. We are with you, Sri Chaitanya is with you, and we would like to see you to get highest score in this topic. All the best.